Hola, amigos, and welcome back to Parenting 365, where calm leadership creates strong children. For over 30 years, I worked with troubled youth and their families, from juvenile custody to schools to family reunification. I learned something important. Most parents are not bad people, but bad habits, poor emotional control, and weak role modeling can quietly shape a child's future. That's why Parenting 365 exists. I have another great story to share, so let's get into this. November 1993. I was 28 years old. 3 months on the job as a probation officer, working graveyard shift at Central Juvenile Hall. At the time, I was what they called working out of class, basically an as-needed employee. Most nights, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 to 7 nights a week. And on this particular night, I learned something that stayed with me for the next 36 years. Not about violence, not about fear, but about integrity. That night I was assigned to units M and N. And yes, I was working with useless again. Back then, only 3 staff worked the building overnight. 1 officer on M side, 1 officer on N side, and me, sitting in the middle control center between both units. But this night was different. I had an added responsibility. I was issued an institutional radio, and every 30 minutes I had to leave the building and walk Division 2 checking for broken windows, ladders, escape attempts, or anything suspicious involving highly dangerous juveniles trying to escape. So when one of my perimeter checks came up, I notified both staff before leaving. Useless on N side, toxic on M side. I told them I was stepping out for the perimeter check. Then I headed into the darkness. Cold air, concrete, radio static. Everything about Juvenile Hall at night felt different, sounded different. Back then, hearing distant automatic gunfire outside the facility wasn't unusual, and that night was no different, especially when you're 28 years old. When I returned and walked back into the unit, something already felt wrong. Useless had let a youth out of his room to use the restroom, but she violated policy. Because only 1 other staff member remained in the unit, and each room housed 2 juveniles. She shouldn't have opened a door until I returned or called movement control for backup. Policies like that existed for a reason. Things could go bad fast. And remember, this was long before many of the safeguards that exist today. While the youth was inside the restroom, Useless discovered an aluminum baseball bat hidden inside his room. Instead of securing the situation properly, she removed the bat herself, then walked directly toward the restroom, confronting the youth with it, scolding him, pointing the bat at him, shaking it in his face, and then suddenly, everything exploded. The youth lunged for the bat. A violent struggle started instantly. At that exact moment, I was re-entering the unit. Toxic was already on the phone calling for backup. Then he saw me. He slammed the phone down and yelled for assistance.
Sanchez! Code red!
We both sprinted toward the struggle. I remember running through the doorway, seeing Useless and the youth wrestling over control of the bat, and then the youth ripped it away from her. And in that split second, I truly believed he was about to clobber her with it. I reacted immediately. I front-kicked him as hard as I could. The impact launched him backward nearly 10 feet. He hit the floor. He struggled to his feet and prepared to swing the bat. Then he turned and sprinted down the hallway. Seconds later, glass exploded. Because we were on the 2nd floor, the youth dove through the broken opening down to the ground below and disappeared into the darkness. But he was still trapped inside the facility perimeter. He was apprehended quickly. Useless quickly left the building for medical observation. And then came the part that affected me the most, the reports. As required, incident reports had to be completed immediately, so I sat down and started writing mine. And that's when the phone calls started, one after another, staff from around the institution calling me.
Sanchez, we stick together here at night. Make sure your report supports her.
I remember sitting there quietly, realizing exactly what they were asking me to do. Then later, a supervisor contacted me privately, and I will never forget what she said.
Sanchez, you didn't hear this from me, but Useless is writing in her report that the youth was already outside his room before you left the unit.
Meaning, her report was shifting responsibility onto me. If that version stood, it could appear that I had improperly left the unit while the youth was already unsecured. And suddenly, at 28 years old, I understood something I had never fully understood before. Sometimes the real test comes after the danger is over. Years passed. Life moved on. Careers moved on. People retired. And honestly, I rarely thought about that night anymore. Then one day, I came across a newspaper article. Useless, now a veteran probation officer years later, had reportedly been arrested alongside her teenage children for alleged shoplifting. According to the article, store security accused her not only of stealing items herself, but allegedly encouraging her children to participate too. And I remember sitting quietly after reading it, not angry, not triumphant, not thinking, I knew it, because that article did not prove anything about the night back in 1993. Those are separate events, separate moments. But it did make me reflect on something deeper. Sometimes behaviors people excuse early become larger problems later. And sometimes systems become so accustomed to saying, that's just how they are, leave it alone, we protect our own, that accountability slowly disappears. And when accountability disappears long enough, people stop correcting behavior. Then eventually, behavior becomes identity. And maybe that was the real lesson from that night. Not the violence, not the bat, not the escape, but how quickly groups can normalize what should never become normal. Girls, one day you may experience this too. Maybe not inside a juvenile hall, maybe not involving violence, but eventually, someone may pressure you to protect others by abandoning the truth. A group of friends, a workplace, a team, a relationship. Someone will eventually say, just go along with it. Don't make problems. We protect our own. And children need to understand something early. Loyalty without integrity becomes dangerous. Because real character is not tested when honesty is easy. It is tested when honesty suddenly becomes uncomfortable. As parents, we spend years teaching children confidence, discipline, communication, emotional control. But eventually, we must also teach moral courage, the ability to stand inside truth, even when pressure surrounds them, even when respected people want something different, even when standing alone feels risky. Because integrity has a cost, and the earlier children understand that, the stronger they become later in life. That night, I learned something I would later teach my daughters. Sometimes people will ask you to protect the group by sacrificing the truth. But character begins the moment you decide, I will not save myself by abandoning my integrity. If this helped you see something in your own home, subscribe to Parenting 365, because sometimes it's not about doing more as a parent. It's about becoming more consistent in what you already know. Adios, amigos. Until the next time, enjoy your journey, and I have a few more parenting tips coming soon.